Welcome to the July 20th meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'll call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Richard Anderson. Cheryl Andrews. Here. Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kukunis.
Here.
Christopher Kanega. James Killian.
Here. He's sneaking up on us.
Marcia King.
Here.
Thomas Lynch. Teresa Martin.
Here.
Deborah McCutcheon. Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Oman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise.
Here.
Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum with 66.27% of the delegates present, 33.73% absent.
Thank you. I'd like to mention that this meeting is being recorded by others besides our normal recording process, so make that announcement. I'll now need approval of motion to approve the calendar of business.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to actually reverse two items to allow for our county council. I guess he may be running late. Could we take item 10 and move it behind item 11? Just basically swap item 10 and 11.
Okay, that's a motion to amend the calendar of
Second.
business. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, moved and seconded. No further comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. We now need a motion to approve the Journal of July 6, 2011.
So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there any additions or corrections to the Journal? Hearing none. Do we have a second on that? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now we come to the communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners, and I see our board here, at least a couple members. We're going to hear from Bill, okay?
I hope everybody's having a good summer so far. And I've missed you.
Microphone, please. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't have one.
Well, enough of the extraneous remarks. Thank you for this opportunity to give our report from the county commissioners. We didn't have much on our agenda. What we've passed in is a request for a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2012. You have that before you, and at the time when you have the public hearings on this, we will be happy to testify. Our meeting today didn't have any significant things on the agenda, and if you have any questions, I think the usual response, I'm supposed to say I'm happy to answer them. I may not be, but you can ask them anyway.
Marcia?
Thanks, Bill. I was just wondering, the governor signed a part of the package for the new budget was a change in the health care law. In the healthcare for municipalities and for the counties and the state. And I didn't know if the county had taken or considering looking into what the changes might be and the effect, because it's supposed to save money. And I know we're through the Cape Cod Municipal Health, so it's a collaborative to all that, but I didn't know if we were undertaking that to see what, if any, savings there might be.
Okay. Mark Zielinski had brought that to our attention, and the impression that I was left with is this is still a matter under negotiation. There is a panel that is supposed to be formed called a Municipal Health Insurance Review Panel, and out of that panel, they are supposed to confirm savings and determine, to read directly from it, sufficient mitigation of plan changes impact So this is what I would suggest to you is a matter that is in process. We're watching it very carefully. And as we have specific information to share with you, that would be the time to do that. Right now, it's pretty much in the area of speculation. We've heard about it. We're waiting to hear what their final pronouncements are, and at that time, I think that would be the appropriate time to respond.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill, we've now closed out 2011 as far as the real estate proceedings go with the Registry of Deeds. How did we do compared to what we budgeted for?
I don't know the answer to that question, so I would take the responsibility of when next we meet to have an answer for you.
Anything else for the commissioners? Okay, Bill, I think some of us have read in the papers that the Cape Cod Commission has received $150,000. Is that right? It's a grant?
You may have read that in the paper, but I believe that was something that was agreed to in a conference committee. I don't believe that money has been awarded.
Oh, okay, so
Has the budget been signed? Yeah, I didn't think the budget had been signed yet.
This is $150,000 for wastewater planning, and it was in the outside section of the budget, but it has been approved.
Approved, but the outside section of the state budget?
Right.
And is it anticipated that we'll have matching funds? Did the commission have matching funds for this?
They will. I don't know exactly how much, but they will.
But that are already budgeted. I assume it's within existing resources.
They're putting up 250,000.
They're putting up 200.
250,000.
So for a total of 4.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds, I guess that's good news.
Maybe you should have all of them and talk about it.
And, okay, anything else for the commissioners? Yes, Marcia?
Wasn't there also $100,000 that we put in? Wasn't that for the same study? Because we have, in our budget.
No, that the $100,000, if I recall,
Right.
if we're talking about the thing that I think you are, it's for the peer review
Oh,
study.
I apologize.
Right.
You're correct. I apologize. You're right.
Well, I guess we're done with you, Bill, so. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Are there any communications from public officials? Before that. Okay, we'll now go communications from members of the public. Do we have any communications from members of the public? Yes. Yep. Well, you need the microphone.
Good afternoon, thanks. Okay, there you go. I'm Preston Ribnick, and I am from Wellfleet, and I thank you for the time this afternoon. I have to say I'm a bit nonplussed with the move by Ms. King, because we're here this afternoon to comment on item number 10, and the fact that that was reversed, so now that we have to give our comments before we understand what the county council will say puts us at a bit of a disadvantage, but I would like to comment on a couple things. We've had some experience with the county council vis-a-vis the Barnstable commissioners when he issued a finding indicating that the commissioners didn't have any direct authority over Cape Light Compact in CVIC. And I strongly objected to that, and I don't know what he'll say today. I wish I did, but I don't. But if he comes before you today and makes the same type of argument, and again, I don't know, I hope maybe during that discussion, Mr. President, maybe we would have a chance to have a conversation. I don't know if anybody from the public would or not at that point. But I would point out that this is the organizational chart for Barnstable County. I just got it a few minutes ago from the county offices. It's the most current iteration that was updated on January 2011. And on the Barnstable County organizational chart, on the bottom row, it has Cape Light Compact. Another box that has Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. Next to the finance, accounts payable, and the dredge. And all of those departments or entities report right on up to the assistant county administrator, the county commissioners, and ultimately to the voters. So my contention is, from everything I've seen, and I've done a little bit of research, is that, in fact, both the Barnstable County Commissioners as well as the Barnstable County Assembly delegates do have authority over these two organizations. And I would hearken back finally this afternoon to Section 2.7 of the Charter, which states inquiring and investigation. The Assembly of Delegates may at any time, upon a request filed by any of its members, request a report on any aspect of the county regional government by making such a request in writing to the Board of Regional Commissioners. So the way I read that is that, frankly, any member of the Assembly could, in fact, ask for a formal report and ask for information. And if you recall our presentation 2 weeks ago today, all Mr. Bibler and I asked for was for you to seek information, as members of the public has been doing for months on end now, from these two entities, to have simple questions that anybody in any business would want to have, or any member of the public, any voter would want to know. And so my hope is that though the discussion by the county council will come after our presentations, my hope is that the vote that was taken at the last meeting would be the decisive vote, and that there would in fact be a committee formed by the president, and that committee would in fact get information in a public way and provide that information to members of the public in an interactive fashion. I thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. Just a point of information, I'm the speaker. I haven't been elected president.
Oh, sorry. What you should be.
Yes, Julie?
Can I make a comment about this?
Well, sure, why not?
Solve that later?
We're fighting for, we're trying to kill time, so why not?
All right. When I returned from Greece, I spoke to Ron and got a brief description of the vote taken about a motion of Leo's 2 weeks ago, and that it had been a small number of people and blah, blah, blah. And, well, you were here, I wasn't, but anyway, what I gathered was that that the council then suggested it didn't count. I do have, so I said, okay, well, you know me, I like to write things down. I do have a proposed request letter with request for information about it, which I could distribute to you if you'd like. My suggestion, it doesn't say request for information, but that could be added to it, but this would be what such a request could say. I have no interest in an investigation. I have no doubt of the legality of the actions of the commissioners, the Cape Light Compact County members, Maggie and Mark, but I do feel that it's somewhat obscure to me, and probably more so to the public, as to exactly what the raison d'etre of the policies of the boards are. And if without full information about the organization, it's hard then to make any judgment about the policies. And while I don't feel that we have control over the policies, because I think they each are structured with boards that are in charge of the policy, I'm guessing that the appointing authorities have limited information about the structure and limited information
Julia,
about.
I don't want
policies.
to, I don't want to
Anyway.
interrupt you, I appreciate it,
Okay.
but, so in a sense, we can't debate this too much now
I'm not-
because it's
yeah,
not agenda.
I'm just going to
But basically,
submit this
you're submitting this
as a
under,
possible
under section
request.
2.7 of the charter, as a
Right.
request for, okay, that's,
Yeah,
so
so-
that's duly submitted. Yeah, Paul?
Just as a point of inquiry, are we going to be, I don't see it on the agenda, so I'm just wondering, are
Not
we
gonna
going to be
discuss.
discussing the motion that was, the resolution that was passed and then ruled upon by Attorney Troy
Well, that,
2
yeah,
weeks ago?
if he shows up, yeah, that's the problem. He called us, I guess he called the clerk, he was somewhere north of Boston around 2 o'clock, and he was headed down here, so that's why, unfortunately, we don't have him here. The question is, can we discuss it among ourselves? I have a very expansive view of that, because if the issue is, if the general issue is placed on the agenda, I think we can. I talked to the Attorney General the day after our previous meeting to bring up the point that you brought up, which is how specific does the agenda have to be as regard to what we can and cannot discuss. And of course, I got a two-handed answer. On one hand, in the other hand, you could do this, so I wasn't satisfied.
I would, at the risk of going over the line, just add as what I thought was a point of information, that there were some of us who voted against the motion or abstained from the motion, not because we were necessarily opposed to the substance of the motion, but because we didn't think it was done in a timely fashion. So I would suggest that at some point that resolution could be brought forward again.
Well, from my understanding of the charter, and I'm going to, the submission by the delegate from Falmouth triggers this process. So regardless of what Troy tells us, we're going to have to vote on this request when I can schedule it, which will probably be the
Julia's
next month.
request.
Julie's request.
I guess my question was about what is the status of Leo's motion?
Well, the status of Leo's motion right now is that we have to, remember, the county, I don't want to get too far because we're talking, but county council doesn't have any authority to do anything. His job is to tell us what we can and cannot do. So right now, we have that motion on the floor, it's been approved. Now, he says that if he tells us that it's not valid, then we're going to have to go and we're going to have to undo that and proceed in another direction. So that's my understanding, but he's not here, so I can't really speak for him.
But we have that in writing.
We have that in writing,
It's
yes.
his opinion that it's not valid.
Well, that's what he says, yes, but he can't invalidate it. We have to do that. That's my feeling is, we have to vote to overturn that. I mean, unless, although, maybe we don't, but he's not here, so I'd rather wait till he. Yeah. Anyway, since I haven't appointed the committee yet, it's moot until I do.
understand.
Okay. Yes, Marcia.
I just have a question on Julia, is this, are you making a formal request for this? I didn't get the impression you were, so is this a
Well,
formal request?
there was the question of whether this was a time to make that. I brought it up because it was relevant to the comment of the public's person. So maybe under new business, I would be saying, I would like to have this be the body of a letter that requests, triggers that under the,
Okay.
you know, I just didn't put in that part of it, but it could be added by Janice.
Okay. Anything else, Leo?
Mr. Speaker, you have mentioned, and I believe we have invited Mr. Troy here this evening in regards or direct response to a letter. Has that letter been distributed to all of us via email, or do we have any hard copies of it here today that could be passed out?
You should have.
Who's in the
Janice, you
packet?
want to respond to that?
All the delegates received it via email, and I have a copy with me. I can go make copies if that's what you wish, but you all got it by email.
Could you make me one copy? Appreciate it.
Meanwhile, okay. Meanwhile, do you have any more comments from the public? Mr. Bibler?
He seems to feel that we have to vote for the assembly to form on Sunday.
Hi, I'm Eric Bittler, Save Our Seashore, and I don't have too much to add to the items that Preston mentioned. This is really just a question of emphasis, and I just want to say that I agree with the delegate from Falmouth, and that we have consistently agreed that we don't believe that the Assembly or the county commissioners have any control over these, direct control over the policies and the policy decisions and the board decisions and so forth, the nuts and bolts of these agencies. We understand the limits of their supervision, and we don't feel that this is an argument about this body or the county commissioners compelling them to do anything other than to request that they provide you with information. Because the fact is that this body and the county government was instrumental in creating these two public entities for the purpose of conducting business on behalf of Barnstable County that lay outside the parameters of the county government, this portion of the county government. And that was a good thing. But you have to act in concert, and you're trying to collectively pursue the aims of the residents of Barnstable County. And we feel that it's appropriate that you have a thorough understanding and that the public have a thorough understanding of their activities and their finances and, the type of information that should be publicly disclosed. We haven't gotten very far on our own as members of the public trying to derive information from them that we feel is fundamental. And we've been down this road before with a prior opinion from the county council and through our efforts with the county commissioners. And I just want to say that we feel that along the way, it seems like the subject was changed. It wasn't ever a question of compelling these entities to pursue their goals in the way that you dictated. It was really always a question of whether or not you could write a letter, ask them some questions, whether you were entitled to have more information, just in the sense of openness and transparency of government and the fact that you're all elected officials. And I believe in Section 2.7, there are plenty of provisions that allow you to send a letter, identify questions. The speaker can form a committee. I don't believe he even needs a motion. Individual assembly delegates can make requests. You can request that they appear before you. All of these things, I don't think there's any debate that you have the power to do, and I think that they would all be extremely healthy things to do, and that is what we have asked for. And so I know that these procedural issues have come up, with the way the motion was put forward and, and that kind of thing, but I hope that what won't be lost is we don't want to put the cart before the horse. If you put a series of questions that you thought were reasonable, or if you had a committee of the whole, which I would recommend, frankly, because I think it would be beneficial for every delegate to learn much more about these entities. They've sort of been left alone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. But I think if you had a committee as the whole and you had an inquiry and you respectfully asked for them to answer some of these questions and provide further detail, and you came up the learning curve, I think that would be healthy for everybody. If they refused to answer you, if they told you that it was none of your damn business, then I think you'd have sort of more of a constitutional crisis as to, where the water meets the shore in terms of what sort of information you should be able to insist upon having. So I just want to make that point clear, that the nature of our request. Thank you.
Or any other communication, John?
Bibbler.
Did you want to start?
Yeah, I just had, in general, I've been trying to research your organization. Does it have an address that's more specific than Wellfleet?
Does not, John. You've asked me this question 3 times, and I've replied to you in writing on 3 separate occasions.
We try to discourage debate during public comment process, because then we're getting into issues that should be on the agenda, but it's not your fault.
Okay, I'm just trying to answer the
So
question.
there is no address.
He can ask you this personally and get the
Okay,
information.
I'm happy to answer that question at any time, and I'm happy to answer it in writing and circulate it. So if you want to put the question to me again in writing and 10 other
But
questions,
you don't
I'll
wish to answer it here?
No, I just said no.
So it has no address?
Has no address.
Okay. So it's a cyber.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
No post office box.
At this point, I think the Assembly will recess briefly, and if Mr. Troy doesn't show up, the clerk has a call into his office, but if he's not going to be here for a while, then it's the middle of the summer and we all have responsibilities, so we'll have to make a judgment call then whether we're going to wait for him. Okay, so do you have a motion to recess?
So moved.
So moved? Thank you. All in favor, say
Ron?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Where is he? He said it was in the paper, he's gonna be there. I'll be your second. Your phone was off, I called her.
Oh, 4:40.
Okay. I'll need a motion to come out of recess.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the Assembly will now convene, and we'll begin with the reports from committees. John, do you have a report? Report from committees?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Finance Committee today convened in a public hearing on proposed Ordinance 11-07 to add to the county's operating budget for fiscal year 2012, $12,500 for Human Services grant for overnights for hospitality. We took testimony from Jill Scalisi and Diane Casey Lee.
Can I have the public's attention on this for a minute? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we asked exactly what the money would be used for, and it was quite comprehensive. I know that they have handled over 30,000 nights of overnights of stay of homeless people in the last 10 years, and they've also placed many people in their own housing. They give them meals, they give them showers, they give them clean clothes and dignity. And I thought it was just a phenomenal program, and it was fleshed out by these folks. And after watching this, and I have the data I can pass on to you statistically about how much money it costs to do all of this, I thought it was great bang for the buck, as did the 3 members of my Finance Committee that attended, and we voted 3-0 positively to ask the Assembly to approve that $12,500 request.
Thank you. That will be placed on the agenda for the 3rd, which I think is our next meeting. I don't think there's been any. Have you had any other meetings? Anyone? Hearing none. We have a report from the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Briefly, I think everyone received in the mail the invitation for the special session for government officials, anti-discrimination practices for Southeastern Massachusetts, business and community leaders. Just a reminder that that does require an RSVP. In addition, just a reminder again on the AmeriCorps graduation, that also requires an RSVP. I believe you all received individual invitations. And finally, on the co-op extension tour for August 17th, I think one Assembly person has already registered with Bill Clark. If anyone else attends, you can contact Bill directly or let me know, and I will let him know if you plan on attending. And a reminder that that is the day of the meeting at the beach with the Assembly, and I think the pickup is going to be at Orleans at the Stop and Shop. So it'll be close, but he promises to end it early enough so that you can get to your meeting at 4 o'clock. And that's it. That's all I have.
Okay. Do you have do you say you have limited availability now over the next couple of weeks?
Yes, I was going to send everyone an email before Friday. I will be out of the office all of next week. And if you have any questions or anything that you need to get to me that needs my attention, I would appreciate it if you could do that by Friday. When I return from vacation on Monday, August 1st, I think it's August 1st, my plan is to complete the calendar of business, get it posted. We have a 48-hour posting requirement, and we can do that, provided I get it done by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that shouldn't be a problem. So again, just to let you know that that's how I'm
Okay.
going to handle it.
Okay. Also remind the delegates that Janice's probationary period expires within the next couple of weeks. I intend to give her a positive recommendation, get together with Maggie and so on. And but if anybody has any comments or suggestions or anything you'd like to know, let me know before then. But so far, it's been a good experience, and we'll go forward from there. Do we have any other business to be brought before the Assembly? Yes.
Well, maybe I am now. I have added to the letter that I gave you, which wasn't really a letter, it's just a paragraph, but would be that we would request that the chairs of CVAC and Cape Light Compact appear at a meeting of the Assembly as a committee of the whole time when we could ask questions. And once we get that scheduled, we should then be thinking of what we want to ask and be sure that we're able to keep the public informed. So
Okay.
I'm requesting that that be on the agenda. If we need to vote it, that's unclear to me, but that's.
I think according to the reply from the missing Mr. Troy, we do need to vote it, so we'll put that on the agenda to see whether the Assembly wants to proceed, and I'm going to hold off on any action on the previous motion taken 2 weeks ago until we straighten all this out and get comment from County Council, who theoretically should be on his way. But right now, even if he does show up, I'm almost predisposed to tell him to come back next week, and we can straighten this out all at once. But is there any other business to be brought before the?
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I would like to ask my colleagues if they would like to request the Register of Deeds to come to a meeting in the next month to give us a report on the revenues that the registry has generated for the fiscal year that just closed. If he so chooses to send the assistant registrar, that's fine too. I just think that the numbers are in, and we can get them directly from the registrar for what fiscal year 2011 looked like.
Yeah. I can put that on the agenda at his, whenever he's available. We're only a few weeks into the new fiscal year, so he's not going to be able to give us any data on whether or not we're meeting the goals that were set out in the 2012 budget. But I'll ask him to come and give that information, so it'll be necessary. I'll need a motion to suspend the rules. Mr. Troy is here. Attorney Troy, do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
I mean, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're up.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I was up at Middlesex County has been moved, the county seat, from Cambridge to Woburn. And so that is not a good thing for traveling. It's even farther, I should say, than it was. So, and there's heavy traffic coming to the Cape, so, which is good for our industries here, I guess. So that's the good news. In any event, my understanding of what we were going to talk about today is we were going to talk about the public comment policy, and we were also going to talk about the issues relating to, I believe this is correct, and you can correct me, the authority of the Assembly to look into certain matters involving organizations that may or may not have ties to Barnstable County. Am I right or am I wrong? Is there anything else?
Well, yeah, the specific request was, we took a vote, we took a vote, which you commented on in your letter to the Assembly, which distributed to the Assembly, but yeah, I think that a general sense of where our authority is, and also the question arises this, as to when a matter can be discussed and how close it has to stand, if something is on the agenda, how wide spread is that? In other words, if we talk, how far do we can go before we're outside of the parameters of that?
Right. Okay, let me answer that question if I can first.
Yeah.
I think that when all is said and done, the public policy procedures actually comport with common sense and are not as complicated as we think. I think the idea is there's two different types of public comment. One is public comment that is not going to involve interaction with the assembly that's going to lead to deliberation. So you may, and this is completely discretionary for each public body, you may, if you wish, have no public comment, or you may have different policies of public comment that distinguish between those matters that involve deliberation and those are not. Many public bodies, for instance, have a short period of time, 3 minutes, 2, 3, 5 minutes, allowing people to come and talk about things that they want to talk about, understanding that they're not going to involve any type of communication with the public body, in this case the assembly, that's going to implicate the deliberation procedures, because then you're being led into a violation of the open meeting law that you didn't intend. If it starts out that it's in that first category of public comment that is anticipated not to involve deliberation, and then it kind of veers inadvertently into deliberation, it's the responsibility of the chair, the speaker in this case, to then terminate the discussion and announce that it will be put on as an agenda item at a specific time and date. Now, the second is obviously when you know the statute actually is very realistic in the sense that it allows the chair right up to the point of the meeting beginning to amend the agenda notice, to put anything that the chair reasonably believes is going to be discussed at the meeting. So in that context, you have some flexibility as long as you amend the agenda. But it is a common sense imperative and frankly the obligation of the chair to make those distinctions. And so the chair, in this case the speaker, has to use his or her authority to decide if it's reasonable that the matter be discussed, given the fact that the most important element of the open meeting law is that people have the right to know when something is going to be discussed. That, as you've seen, in my opinion, that right trumps the right of the public to speak. The statute is geared to making sure that if some decision is going to be made or any part of the process leading to a decision, that everyone who wants to see it, to watch it, because they don't have the right to speak, it's right in the statute. Everybody has the right to be there, and that is the principal goal. Now, as you know, the Attorney General's office has submitted requests for comments that I think ended at the end of May, and there may be additional regulations which are issued which will help us on this point.
I guess the question is that in the case of the vote which we took last week, the public was actually placed on the agenda, and they were given a slot, and they were given a general, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but basically saying they wanted to discuss openness in county government, so on and so on. So in other words, it wasn't a question of them bringing up, so the public was aware in some sense of what was going to be. I certainly was. So then the question is, how far do we veer from that? If they say, well, we don't think county government is open, we think you should look into it, are we then crossing the line into something that people don't anticipate what is going to be brought up? So,
well, and let me answer that because I have an answer in writing that is coming, but it has not been finished. I looked at the agenda item, and I looked at actually what you did, even though the motion failed and is not a legal vote because of its failure to comply with the requirements of the charter regarding the quantum of vote necessary. I do believe that the agenda item was sufficiently broad so that the type of inquiry that you were authorizing seems to be something that the public could anticipate could happen out of that. And I think to that extent that it would be difficult to say that that was a violation of the open meeting law. I think it's clear, for instance, that if you're talking about a specific issue and certain members of the assembly decide that they want to do something in terms of some type of inquiry or investigation or something like that, I think the public, can reasonably expect, as opposed to something that might be, more, that might be more intensive in terms of its scope. Don't forget, if you look at the charter, everything that comes before the charter, before the assembly under the charter, has to either be an ordinance or a resolution. But each of those items, unless it's under one of the other specific provisions of the charter, and I have those with me today, as if you want to talk about the different things that you can do, it does have to be embodied in that type of format, and therefore it is correct to all of us understand that unless you have a quorum present, number one, you have to have the requisite amount of people, and secondly, that the vote represents a quantum of vote that is equal to a majority of the population of Barnstable County. You cannot pass a resolution, and you cannot pass an ordinance.
What you're saying is that any ordinance that, or resolution that passed needs 50-point-something%.
Exactly. And a quorum.
And a quorum present.
Of the requisite amount of towns, because there's a minimum amount of people
8.
that have to be here. It can't just be the big towns.
Okay. Leo, I'm going to recognize Leo because I know he has a question.
Thank you. Just specifically on that point right there, this specific motion that we're talking about, and I'm just going to use it as an example because it helps me clarify how we're going to proceed in the future, was neither a ordinance nor a resolution. It was basically a motion to create a subcommittee, which, from what I understand, reading the governance manual and the charter, we have the ability to do. And I guess what I'm trying to find is a paragraph in here that states that regular votes don't need 51% of the majority of the population of Cape Cod, but in fact 50% or more than 50% higher amount of the people present. And
There is, I can get you in writing rather than go through the charter right now. The charter, as I said, does not envision that the assembly take action other than in a resolution or an ordinance. If you are taking action under a specific process that's outlined in the charter, and there are some, you have to follow that process there too. So I think what you might be referring to, because I looked at a number of different ways that you could do what I think that you were trying to do. Under section 2.7, it says the Assembly of Delegates may at any time upon a request filed by any of its members request a report on any aspect of the Cape Cod regional government by making such a request in writing to the Board of Regional Commissioners. That requires that a member of the Assembly make a written request and that the Assembly consider that request. And it considers that request in some type of format, either by an ordinance or a resolution.
Yeah, Leo?
just to follow up with that, I'm actually going to the Manual of Governance, Policies and Procedures, and it does say here that in general, ordinances in general, the legislative power of the county vested in the Assembly shall be exercised by adoption of ordinances except provided in subsection E. And when you go to subsection E, section II, it says the exception to resolutions or ordinances following matter provided do not require an ordinance, and it specifically says to conduct an inquiry or an investigation. And that's why I made the motion under open session.
All right.
And again, it may
And I'm not criticizing anything that anybody did.
No, I'm asking these questions
I will
because
tell
we
you
want to do
this.
the right thing.
The charter trumps any provisions of any other document, period, that you cannot vary the terms of the charter. That's the law of the Commonwealth, and you have to follow it. Section 2.5C says, this is a very important sentence, the affirmative votes of delegates representing a majority of the population of Barnstable County shall be necessary to adopt any ordinance, resolution, appropriation order, or to take any other official action as the Cape Cod Regional Government's legislature. If it comes under that, if when you're authorizing an inquiry, it comes, if that is an official act, and I assume you mean it to be that, then you have to comply with that provision. It's an integrated thing, and I grant this, and I concede that the charter has to be read, a number of different paragraphs have to be read together. It's not all in one place. It's confusing, and I've been working on it since it was originally adopted, and I have to take time to go around and try to put it together. I think one of the things, I want to talk about inquiry and investigation. I want to talk to you about, and let me address it in the context of the decision that you have to make. As I understand it, and I am not, you have to make the decision, so anything I'm telling you are just guidelines. I'm not suggesting anything. I have no bottom line. The first thing that the charter refers to this body and the county commissioners is you are limited it to taking up matters that are within your jurisdiction. You are a creature of law of the general court. You don't have the option to go outside of the law. It has to be within your jurisdiction. So the question is, when you make an inquiry and an investigation, the charter in section 2.7 says it's limited to an aspect of the Cape Cod regional government. So whatever you want to do, it has to be an aspect of the Cape Cod regional government. Now, as I understand it, there are two different organizations. I'm not counsel to either of the other organizations involved. I've never been to their meetings. I don't know anything other than what I see, just the same thing you see when you look up the laws. One of the organizations, both of the organizations are separately constituted governmental bodies. And there have been a lot of questions raised about the affairs of those bodies, which I think are completely appropriate. They are questions within the public domain. The question is, who has the responsibility to answer those questions? Do those bodies have the responsibility to answer those, or do you? Does it somehow implicate the jurisdiction of Barnstable County? Now, let's analyze. What is the relationship of Barnstable County to CVEC, C-V-E-C? The only relationship that it has, it's a separate legal entity, is that we have a member on a multi-body, which is called CVEC. End of story. Let's go by analogy. Does that mean that if a government entity has a member on another body, that they have the right to investigate? Let me give you good news. South Sudan has just become the 193rd independent nation to be recognized by the United Nations. It has a delegate. That happened this week, if you've been seeing it. And that's great news, that a government is independent and duly constituted. But by analogy, South Sudan has a representative and a delegate to the United Nations. Does that give the government of South Sudan the right to investigate the United Nations? Let me give you another example, closer to home. The Steamship Authority. The town of Barnstable has a representative on the Steamship Authority. And that representative participates in the governance of the Steamship Authority. Does that give the city council or the town council of the town of Barnstable the right to investigate the Steamship Authority? That's the question. Is there a nexus here? So what I'm saying to you is, you have to answer the question. I'm not answering it. Can you say, based on the fact that you have, the county has one representative on this separate governmental body, that you have the right to investigate it? Is that an aspect of the Cape Cod regional government? I don't know. That's the question you have to answer. With the Cape Light Compact, it's a little more complicated. But if you look at the administrative code, the Cape Light Compact is not listed as one of the subordinate agencies of Barnstable County. You do have an appropriation, a relatively modest one. I'm told it's about $126,000, something like that, in which the county funds the Cape Light Compact. But the monies that the Cape Light Compact are lending or granting or whatever they're doing to CVEC are not part of that appropriation. They are other monies. Those monies are monies that they get because of the way these separate entities have been organized, and they are from the tax that is paid on the bill, on the utility bills. So the question is, do you have, as Barnstable County, given that right, do you have the right to consider that as part of your jurisdiction? Now, in fairness, there are several other, complicating matters. There's an administrative services agreement between the county and these two organizations. That's a separate issue that maybe you should look at. Is that appropriate? Do you think that's an appropriate thing for the county to do? Or should these organizations be told, get your own organizational structure, we want to segregate that? That seems to be obviously a legitimate issue. But that's a matter of a separate contract between, and an agreement between these entities and the county. It's not part of your jurisdictional charter. So what my answer to it is that you have the right to make an inquiry. You have to do it by majority vote of the population of the county with the requisite quorum, the requisite numbers of people that are here. And incidentally, you have to have at least delegates, 8, as you know, 8. So you need that amount. And then if you find that it is a aspect of the Cape Cod regional government, a member then may make the request, has to be in writing, and you, by a majority, you don't want to talk about majority vote without having to go through the long formulation of it. The 51% of the population, you can authorize it. And if that's what you want to do, you're able to do that. But you have to understand that by doing that, you're making a finding that those organizations are aspects of the Cape Cod regional government, because that's a requirement of the charter.
Yeah, I just want to comment up before I open it up, is that I think in the meetings that we've had so far where we've discussed this, and there's only been a couple, I think we've made it perfectly clear, at least I have, and I think the delegates agree with me, that CBEC is not a branch of county government. But however, the Cape Light Compact is listed in the county report, the yearly report, as an aspect of county government. It's listed there with the Fire Training Academy, with the Cape Cod Commission, so on. It's right
That's
there.
fair.
The charter says that, when we, immediately following the meeting of 2 weeks ago, I received a couple of phone calls from people saying, well, you can look into this, but you're limited to this and you're limited to that, and you can't ask this and can't ask that. So I went back to the charter, and the charter says, as you quite accurately pointed out, it says, the Assembly of Delegates may at any time upon a request filed by any of its members request a report on any aspect of the Cape Cod regional government by making such a request in writing to the Board of Assembly. So that's not qualified. I mean, we can assume that somewhere in the stratosphere there's laws that govern that, but until it specifically says in the charter that we're limited in where our inquiry can go, I'm going to assume that we can ask pretty much anything we want. They don't have to answer us. But the other thing is that I agree with you, the charter is inconsistent, because further on it says that the Assembly of Delegates has the power to call before them any of the members, the commissioners. We can drag in whoever we want and ask them questions and so on, which seems like redundancy to the formal process that's set out here. But I'm presuming that whatever we can do is limited, but that's up to the delegates and what they want to do. But so
And I agree with you that the interpretation, the legal interpretation of what you can do, what you can't do, is yours. This is your discretion, and until a court tells you that you have violated the law, as long as you can find support in the charter and you can convince a majority of the delegates that this is how it's supposed to be, then it is a lawful act until declared otherwise by a court.
Okay. Well, I'm done. Yes, Cheryl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Troy, it's nice to hear from you. I can't say I'm clear about all this, but there's been a little bit of progress. I was confused as soon as the vote began to be tallied, because we were functioning under the Committee of the Whole at the time. And when I first joined the Assembly, which was only recently in January, that was the first part of public service that I was totally thrown by. I have no experience, and I was a selectman before this. And so I was not used to an agenda being done this way. And I was told that when it says Committee of the Whole, that when we vote, it's one person, one vote, and that when it says Assembly convenes, then we go into the weighted vote. So it would, if that's correct.
If I could answer, whenever the Assembly acts, whether it acts as a Committee of the Whole or as regular under the jurisdiction of the Assembly, it has to operate by a weighted vote in accordance with the Charter.
Well, then please educate me. I think the first thing we did when I arrived was select a speaker, and it was most certainly not a weighted vote.
That's an exception. The Charter provides, the Charter actually provides that.
So how many exceptions are there?
That's the only one that I know of. I think there's one other one, yeah. And the clerk, yeah, you can elect officers. Yeah.
Okay, so when someone told me when you're in Committee of the Whole, it's 1 for 1, that was a bad piece of information. Okay, thank you. So then it is quite legal then for us to take a vote during Committee of the Whole and have the clerk tally it as a weighted vote.
It is. I looked at that issue, and I frankly am not really sure that operating under this thing about the committee of the whole is really helpful. That you might, as an administrative practice, it might seem easier for the public to understand, because I'll be very candid with you. I had to go to the law books and read about the committee of the whole too. I'm not as, you probably knew more about it than I did.
No, I didn't.
It's a parliamentary thing, but frankly, it's kind of outdated, and it might be a better thing to do to just conduct business under, as the assembly.
I agree. Then, that brings up another question, is I did the same thing. I went to look to see what a resolution is. For instance, unfortunately, having been a selectman for so long, and selectmen boards and other boards do things on the fly. Somebody will, a subject will come up and somebody will say, I think we should do this, and I'll make a motion, and boom, and you vote on it, And so the question, Leo's question as to what a resolution is and what an ordinance is, I looked into that, and I presume that if you make a motion, it's a resolution. In other words, I resolve that we do X, Y, and Z. Now, what a formal resolution is, I don't know, but I'm presuming that as long as it's within the context of what we're discussing, that a delegate can move to do something, can move to change to, and that's considered a resolution. So you have to educate me on that as much as is possible. I agree with you, though. I've discussed this with the clerk, and the idea of the assembly convening, not convening committee of the whole is sort of back in Edwardian days or something, I think.
Speech.
So what is a resolution? That's the question.
Well, I think the resolution can be defined by saying that it's not an ordinance. There are certain things that are required to be done by ordinance and by inference or operation of law. Those things that don't require being handled as ordinances can be done as resolutions.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, as I have indicated, the distinction is really more of a definition than anything else, because actually all of the other requirements are identical. And a resolution, I think the way that sometimes it's thought of is that if something needs a 2/3 vote, you can circumvent that requirement by putting before the body, for instance, at a town meeting, you could, instead of if you had a zoning amendment and you didn't think you had the 2/3 vote, you could say, Mr. Moderator, I have a resolution here, such and such, this is a good idea, and you might get a majority vote. In this case, since the quantum of vote is identical, there really is not a great deal of difference in terms of how it's handled here at the Assembly. So certain things that are required to be done, obviously financial matters and things like that, they are defined, that have to be done through the ordinance procedure, and those that aren't required to be ordinances can be handled as resolutions. And they have every vote, incidentally, if you look at the another part of the charter, every single action the Assembly, it's section 2.5 D, Roman numeral 4. Every matter which comes before the Assembly of Delegates shall be put to a vote, the results of which should be recorded. When requested by any member, the vote shall be by roll call, and the vote of each member shall be recorded in the journal. So you've got some pretty strict requirements for accountability, and voice votes, aren't going to work, and you've got the system that you require the population and the 8 people.
Okay, is there any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. We're, as a very specific question, about to vote on a resolution to invite the CVEC to come and answer questions. By doing so, we are establishing at least our intent that this is a function of county government. By their acceptance, they would be doing the same, which may lead to their denial because they do not want to be considered as being part of county government. What I'm trying to foresee is what their chair is going to say, who unfortunately, coincidentally, is a town council as well. So we're going to be finding ourselves we're asking you to come because we think your county issue or they're going to turn around and say, we're not coming because we don't want you to consider us a county issue. Is there another way we can get them to come before us without resolution, I guess, is what I'm getting at?
Well, yeah, and before that, I want to just make sure that I've documented everything that I've said. In section 2-8B, that tells you what is provided by resolution, and in section 2-8D, it has acts that are required to be by ordinance. Now, if you look at resolution, the first one, which you're speaking about, it appears that's appropriate because it says, the following matters may be provided by resolution, shall not be deemed to require an ordinance, and subsection Roman numeral 2 says the conduct of any inquiry or an investigation. Okay, now remember though that there's a lot of language in the charter. This is, you're going to I'm not speaking about you. You as a majority of, as that term is used in the charter, are going to have to determine that CVIC is within the jurisdiction of Barnstable County, that somehow comes under your aegis, because otherwise you quite frankly are not exercising your jurisdiction properly. So you have to make that decision. That's not a legal question. That's a judgment question that you have to do, and you have to do it fairly looking at the language in the charter. If you come to that point that you make that determination, then you would make you would do it as a resolution. CVEC would then be, I assume, you are investigating them. Now, let's play it out. If you're a separate entity, let's say you decide instead of CVEC, you decided you're going to investigate the Mashpee Board of Health.
If we serve on it.
Right. And if you served on it. Is that what you said? Well, you're not, yeah, but keep this in mind. Yeah.
I'm suggesting there is some connection in that the CVEC has an appointee of the county
Right.
on its board.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I don't want to get too far afield
No,
in
and
your
you,
analysis.
right.
I mean, the county may serve on various housing boards.
Right.
Which may be a better analysis, but.
Well, I guess that's exactly the question you have to decide. You have to decide if you have a member on a multi-member board. Does that mean, therefore, that you have jurisdiction to investigate that that's your decision?
I guess in your parlance, could we issue them immunity to come before us?
No.
So that they don't, actually establish the fact that they are a county agency?
Well, the question is, if you're an independent legal entity, which they are, there's no question about that, then, and you receive the invitation, I guess by acquiescence, and you decide you want to come, then and you've decided it's within your jurisdiction, everybody is playing ball, and then it goes forward. But if it's not, do you have any authority to force that or require them to do so? I would say no.
No, I'm not even asking for that. I'm just
Right.
saying, is there a nice way to get them to come without actually saying that they're here for that reason?
Other than that you're conducting an investigation, and in fairness to them, that you have a representative on the board. Now, don't forget too, that they are a separate governmental body, so they are entitled to all of the provisions that govern governmental bodies, including like the public records, the conflict of interest statute, the executive sessions, open meeting law. They are governed by the same rules that you do. So it could conceivably be that, for instance, if let's just by way of example, because as I told you, I've been upfront with you. I don't know anything about how CVEC operates. I am telling you this: that if they feel that that your investigation concerns a matter that's within their litigation strategy, then they are entitled to claim that exemption under the statute. And whether that's there's a process for all these things. Don't forget, there's a dispute about the open meeting law, there's a process that you can get that decided. There's a dispute about conflicts of interest, you can get that decided. It's all decided, and at the point when that is decided, that is the end of the discussion, because that is the way the hierarchical system of review of decisions is made.
Leo in a minute, but I'd like to comment on Spiro's question. We don't anticipate this being an antagonistic process, so we're going to, it's just a question of information, but the problem that presents itself is that these two boards have interlocking directorates. In other words, I just found out the other day that the representative to CVEC from Harwich is the same, he's also representative to Cape Light Compact, and some of the members of the county administration serve on those boards. So if I have someone in front of me and I ask them, my problem as a speaker will be saying, well, I can ask them a question about Cape Light Compact, and then somebody raises their hand and asks them about CBEC, and they say, well, I can, as the treasurer of Cape Light Compact, I can answer that question, but as the treasurer of CBEC, I can't. In other words, I think that speaking to Spiro's question is that we have to make the distinction as to what is on the table and what isn't and who is answerable. It's going to be very difficult under the circumstances because so many people serve on both boards and have different responsibilities depending on their position on those boards. So, but I don't anticipate,
Right. And on the subject of the so-called idea that people are serving on different boards, think of this. Every single town here, you have a representative on the Cape Cod Commission, right? Does that give your individual towns the authority to investigate the Cape Cod Commission? Does the town of Barnstable, the town of Howard, Brewster, do you have the right to say to the Cape Cod Commission, we want you to come here, we've got some questions? Now, maybe the Cape Cod Commission would come. They're very savvy people. But the point is, if they don't want to go. So you're right. If you can do anything as in a amicable fashion to get the story out as whatever the story is, then I agree with you. That's a good idea. But if otherwise, you've got a different game.
Did you have something to follow up?
And following the spirit of that, I've now closed my ordinance of governance and gone right to the charter, and it does say conduct an inquiry or an investigation. I think that we should be dropping the term investigation from our discussions, because an investigation alludes to the fact that there may be some improprieties of something being done wrong. The gist of my motion and the gist of what I wanted, how I wanted to proceed, was an inquiry. Okay. Now, you used the Cape Cod Commission as an example, so I will continue to use them because I think it's prudent to our discussion. If the town of Howard, who does have a representative on the Cape Cod Commission, if a bunch of residents from the town of Howard go to the selectmen and say, you know what, we have some questions about how the Cape Cod Commission is operating. We understand there are funds that are put somewhere specifically to do some intersections and to do this and that. And we have asked the Cape Cod Commission, and they haven't given us an answer. Don't you think it's in the purview of the Board of Selectmen, using the open meeting laws and using the public access laws that are out there, because the Cape Cod Commission is a governmental authority, to, as a board, request that the Cape Cod Commission come in front of them and answer some questions very pertinent to, again, funding, specific grants and specific monies set aside. Just not because they have either control over the Cape Cod Commission, which I agree, I don't believe they have any control over them, nor do I think they have the power to change what the Cape Cod Commission is doing. But I really take the stand that I think the Board of Selectmen, just like any member of the public, has the right to ask a governmental body for some public records. And if general, and this is the road that we've gone down, is that people, individuals, if you will, feel as if they're hitting a brick wall, and what they've done is they've come to their legislative body, which is us. And I agree with you. I don't think we have a lot of control over these two particular agencies, nor do we have any authority over them, but I do believe as a governmental body, we have the right to inquire under the public records law and under the open meeting laws. And certainly, if there's issues that we think should be changed, I think that we probably have the authority to make a recommendation. They may take it and throw it in the trash. We're not empowered to force anyone to change. The selectmen aren't empowered to change the Cape Cod Commission. But they may say, you know what, Cape Cod Commission, we don't particularly like having these funds here. We'd like to see you do it this way. Who knows? The Cape Cod Commission might say, you know what, that's a better way to do it. That's the kind of the way I think we should be proceeding, and I'm hoping, and because you're the lawyer, that would be the legal aspect of doing it.
It is certainly within the authority of any governmental body to make a request to another body as part of an inquiry to provide information, and that's certainly legitimate. With the caveat that you are limited to matters within, the jurisdiction of the Cape Cod Regional Government and not other matters. But I agree with you.
When I asked you to be here, I made a resolution in my own mind that I could respectfully disagree with you, but I wasn't going to argue with you. So I promise that I won't do that. I mean, if you're here to give us advice and in your role as counsel, and we appreciate it.
And I respect everybody's opinion. It's your decision, as I keep on telling you to make. It's not mine.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from Mr. Troy, who's right off the road? Yeah, John.
Just briefly, I don't know if you've reviewed the new chart of the way county government is outlined, but one of the members of the public today asked very specifically in our chart, it shows that both the Cape Light Compact and CVEC as members of Barnstable County government. Do you think that that's an error in the way that chart was designated now, and maybe it should be changed?
What's the genesis of the chart? I don't understand.
It's right behind you. It's what Barnstable County has issued as an organizational chart, and it specifically says that both of those organizations are part of Barnstable County government. If you had not had a chance, maybe that's not a fair question. But
well, I would say this, and I have not seen this before, but if you were taking the position that these agencies were not under the umbrella of the county, this would obviously be a problem. In fairness,
or at least confusion.
Right. It at the very least is. But I will tell you that regardless of how it is formatted, whether it's in this or somebody says something or the people take official action, it actually doesn't change the legal reality. The legal reality is whatever the law says different organizations are. I do want to tell you one thing. We just, and I won't say any more unless you have any specific questions, but one of the things I want to refer to, I've read it being said, and I have read it from other sources, and I told you that there was a process by which different things were determined, and that process is actually being undertaken right now. We're going to know when the process is finished about this whole thing about conflict of interest. If you saw the opinion that I recently did about one of the county commissioners, it goes to the specific point that many of you people have connections with towns, or you serve, or many of our officials in the county serve on town boards, or they're town employees, or there are other various connections. And the question is, does that rise? Is this term that we are hearing so frequently to the level of a conflict of interest? When I analyzed the question and I looked at the statute, I saw a very important distinction in the conflict of interest law that is a distinction that's highly material to Barnstable County. And that says that everything in Chapter 268A says, except as otherwise provided by law. Well, this is the law of the Commonwealth of Barnstable County, the Home Rule Charter. And what this is about regionalization. That's the whole point of regional government. When counties were abolished because they were corrupt, the state allowed certain kind of laboratory experiments to exist to see, does regionalization work? We're used to towns, in cities and towns in Massachusetts. If you go to Florida, the counties have all the authority. It's Broward County, Dade County. The counties run everything. The towns don't have that type of thing. So the experiment is there certain areas of the state, or maybe as a model for the whole state at some point, where when we regionalize services, it's going to work better. It's going to have an economy of scale. It's going to save money. It's going to have communities going past geographic lines and working together. And that's the basis of the opinion that I rendered. And I said, except as otherwise provided by law, means that those rules don't apply to Barnstable County. Because the whole point of the county was to get people from the towns to come here and work with the county, and for the county to go work with the towns. It's all a synergy of effort. And so the answer to it is, that's my opinion. Now, I'm either right or I'm wrong. But when the Ethics Commission reviews that opinion, and it is going to be reviewed, and there's an answer, just like the first opinion. I think you saw that the Ethics Commission affirmed my first opinion. If they affirm the second opinion, that is the end of that issue. It is not a conflict of interest to serve on various boards or two boards or be in this board or that board. That's the whole idea. And what I'm trying to say to you is, if you really think that thing through, it flies in the face of regionalization. And we have no business being here if we're going to demand some type of separation between the towns and the regional government. Because if you look at the charter, that's exactly what it says. The charter is created to work as a region, not as individual towns.
I think it's clear, I'll go back to the delegates, but I think it's been clear in the previous discussions we've had that you haven't been party to, that ethical questions are not really on the table for us, because we're not empowered to impose or ethical standards on anybody. That's up to the people in Boston. I've been told that before. And as far as conflict of interest goes, I agree with you. That's it's a legal matter, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to judge that. So, yeah.
It's getting late, so I'll try and keep
Yes.
it quick. Of all the issues that you spoke to today with regards to this potential inquiry, the one that I think you went over quickly, which is the one that I think a lot of people talk about, is that intergovernmental services agreement. I understand your point that having a regional entity like CVEC with a member from each town makes sense, that's regionalism. But what I'm hearing and maybe perceiving is that by the county commissioners have a representative on that board, but the Cape Light Compact also has a representative on that board, and then 2 county employees also are employed by that board. So that, right? Well, aren't they funded by?
I don't think they're employed. No, I know. What I think let me just go back and say this, is that when these 2 entities were created, they were created partly through the initiation of the county. But what it actually involved, the 2 of them, as I understand it, are creatures of what's called Intergovernmental Agreement Authority, which is Chapter 40, I believe, Section 4A. And ironically, what happened is that went back to each of the towns, those intergovernmental agreements. They had to be approved by the town meeting. So Provincetown had to vote to participate in that intergovernmental agreement at its town meeting. Now, an interesting...
The one between the commissioners and...
No. I'm talking about the intergovernmental agreement that has created these 2 agencies. They're created by virtue of intergovernmental agreements. Now, the interesting thing that people may have not noticed is that the legislature has actually loosened the rules on intergovernmental agreements and now no longer requires town meeting approval. And boards of selectmen may now commit the town, and that's a very important thing. So you see that there is more flexibility and more ability, and I read into that action by the legislature being supportive of intergovernmental agreements in order to solve different problems. Now, you're talking about, I believe, the Administrative Services Agreement, which is an agreement between the county and the agencies involved, that has the county do the clerical and administrative support staff. That certainly is a legitimate discussion. Maybe that's not a good idea, because obviously that does, I concede that makes it appear, anyways, that the county has more of a role in it, and the address, of course, is the county, is the county seat. And so that's a very legitimate issue. And that's certainly an issue that you and the county commissioners, the assembly and the county commissioners, should probably have a conversation about. Because if that were not, I agree with you, if there were not for the Administrative Services Agreement, and if the Cape Light Compact were not housed in the building on the other side of the parking lot, or was down in Yarmouth or Howard or wherever it wanted to be, then, people may, not see they see it through a different perspective. And I agree with you about, but that's something that you, as the assembly, should be speaking to the commissioners about, because that's a contract, that can be modified.
Anything else? Thank you. You've been,
Thank you.
even though you're a lawyer, you're actually very informative and
Thank
came
you.
down with hard and fast decisions. I appreciate that.
I don't believe, just by the way, you can check this, I don't think the people involved get any salaries as a result of that. I don't think they get any additional compensation. So there's no real carrot in it for them. You might find that the people that are involved that have these so-called positions might be happy to be relieved of them.
Okay. We will address this when we deal with Julia's motion and also with Leo's, we revisit the previous vote taken 2 weeks ago. So now we are back under, we've just gone through other business, and there's only one other item on the agenda. Oh, you have something under other business, Leo?
Yes, just because, again, I may disagree with the attorney, but we're not going to debate it here today, and he's the attorney, and we should follow his advice. Seeing that he's advising us that the motion that was taken last week did not pass, I don't think we need to do any follow-up, either rescinding that motion or not. But I do want to let the members know that the next time we convene, I will be bringing a resolution forward. I will try to get it to our clerk ahead of time so everyone gets a chance to review the language of it. And I'm asking the speaker to make sure that it is on the agenda so that we will be able to talk about it freely. And because I know that some of the members were concerned about that aspect too. So that will be in the clerk's hands in a few days.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. I need a motion on Article 15, item 15.
Move to adjourn?
Okay, here a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.